In a stunning turn of events at the European summit, Fedor Yemelianenko shocked everyone when he boldly took a mask from the officials and confronted the president of Finland. With just one phrase, he stunned the audience into silence, making a statement that could potentially reshape the landscape of global sports. Stay tuned to discover how this moment unfolded, and the powerful implications it holds. You might be left in disbelief at what happens next. As we dive into this tale, let's reflect on a world where some voices remain unheard, overshadowed by the clamor of powerful entities. Fedor Yemelianenko emerged from an era molded by turbulence and turmoil, an age where raw passion resonated like a triumphant fanfare. He approached the venue, embodying a calm confidence, not fearing the next confrontation. True victory, he believed, isn't measured by trophies alone, but in resilience, the ability to stand firm when others falter. His steady gaze told a story of discipline, a lifetime etched in a face that wore the marks of countless hours of grueling training. With each defeat came a lesson, and every victory was merely the precursor to new challenges. Fedor dressed modestly in a dark suit, eschewing flashy garments that might distract from the person he truly was. He believed the world was suffocated by noise, too many hollow words that obscured true meaning. For him, clarity and inner strength were paramount. In Helsinki, amidst representatives from various nations, a battleground of ambitions and fears lay before them. Here was a space where the essence of sports should symbolize unity, humanity, and peace. Yet, the air buzzed with the weight of expectation and political rhetoric, a cacophony of doublespeak that often masked discomforting truths. Fedor, sensing a need for authenticity, chose to stand apart from the fray, rejecting compromise. As the discussions unfolded, he felt the chilling isolation of truth, a realization that the essence of his message might be lost among those who preferred to silence inconvenient realities. He took his place at the table, absorbing the energy of the room, the tension palpable like the stillness before a thunderstorm. Fedor's presence attracted a mixture of respect, curiosity, and fear, particularly from those who understood the gravity of his passion. When the Finnish President Alexander Stubb took the stage, he spoke of values and the European spirit with a polished confidence. But Fedor remained unshaken. The president's words, though persuasive, felt superficial against the backdrop of unfolding events. Fedor took note of the tension, his composure contrasting sharply with the underlying anxiety that permeated the room, a reflection of the power dynamics at play. Then came the moment. The moderator called on Fedor. He stood, exuding a quiet strength that commanded attention. Rather than rushing to respond, he let a heavy silence envelop the room, creating a space where each word would carry immense weight. He had one pressing question: at what point did sport cease to be a celebration of spirit and become a platform for political games? His voice resonated like a sudden clap of thunder, reverberating through the hall. This was not an act of aggression, but a challenge to the status quo. Values, he continued, should not be a tool for selective application. They ought to apply equally to all. His assertion reflected deep-seated frustrations about a system that often prioritized interests over integrity. His declaration hung in the air. Fedor knew he was navigating treacherous waters, his words could incite outrage or inspire solidarity. He recounted the journey of athletes, alone on the field, devoid of political affiliations, competing for the pure essence of sport itself, not nationality or politics. Discrimination had no place in this arena. As his voice rose, it carried an urgency, breaking barriers of protocol and decorum. In him, the audience felt the stirrings of change. He was not there to attack, but to defend the very spirit of athletic competition. The hall buzzed with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Would his words spark a revolution? Would he challenge the leaders who preferred complacency over confronting difficult truths? Just then, an unexpected voice emerged, a diplomat from Hungary seeking to interject after Fedor's powerful statement. What could he possibly add to this moment of tension? As eyes turned, the atmosphere thickened with possibility. The stage was set for a confrontation that could alter the fate of sports diplomacy forever. In a crucial moment in Helsinki, a room teeming with officials and athletes from various nations became the battleground for a clash of ideals. Each individual present was shrouded in layers of ambition, fear, and unspoken political plays. As Fedor Yemelianenko entered this arena, he felt the weight of the moment pressing upon him, a moment where the truth could break free from the grip of convention. With stoic resolve, Fedor didn't take a seat. Instead, he stood with a fighter's poise, his gaze focused inward, paying no mind to the surrounding tensions. He sensed the apprehension radiating from others. Whispers of respect mingled with lingering fear as he scanned the room filled with dignitaries. Despite witnessing their anxiety, he remained unwavering, embodying the strength that comes from knowing one's place in the world. As the hushed atmosphere enveloped the hall, it was as if the very air anticipated a storm. The president of Finland, Alexander Stubb, with a confidence that seemed rehearsed, spoke of core values and the European commitment to integrity in sports. His articulate proclamations, however, felt hollow to Fedor, echoing through a chamber thick with political subtext rather than genuine belief. The applause that followed Stubb's address felt obligatory, devoid of true fervor. Fedor's stillness contrasted sharply against the superficiality of the moment. He, unlike others, was not there to play the game of appearances but to remind them of the true spirit of competition, the pursuit of excellence irrespective of the nationality a person lays claim to. But would they listen? As Fedor prepared to voice his counterpoint, the weight of silence hung in the room, poised to amplify his words like thunder after a lightning strike. His question, straightforward yet unsettling, pierced through the fabricated facade: when did sports become merely a platform for political posturing? The room shifted, unease pulsed through those in attendance. His assertion had struck a nerve, triggering a wave of discomfort among leaders swayed by fleeting interests rather than the integrity of their athletes. Their expressions morphed from confident to wary, as he continued. You preach about values, yet how can rules only apply when it's convenient for some? With each phrase, he dismantled the pretenses surrounding them. Deep, methodical, and clear, his voice resonated with conviction, striking harder than any mere display of anger ever could. Amidst their initial resistance, a sense of accountability began to take root, lingering questions lingering longer than the applause ever could. Would they rise to the challenge of reconciling their actions with their stated values? Those in power felt the tightening grip of scrutiny as Fedor stood unyielding, ready to challenge the very foundation they stood upon. Then, just as the atmosphere seemed to reach its boiling point, a new voice emerged, cutting through the tension: a diplomat from Hungary. Would this unexpected intervention derail Fedor's momentum, or would it spark an even greater confrontation? The stakes had never been higher, and the world was watching, holding its breath for the unfolding drama. In a vibrant European summit, an unexpected incident unfolds. Fedor Yemelianenko captures the attention of everyone in attendance. When he steals a mask from high-ranking officials, tensions rise. But it's not just his disdain for the rules that stirs the room, it's the potent words he unleashes that leave a profound impact on world sports. As the president of Finland, Alexander Stubb, addresses the audience, his demeanor radiates confidence. His gestures are calculated, his voice assured, yet a hint of tension hangs in the air. He talks about values and the European choice, though it feels like he's treading through taboo waters. The atmosphere thickens with unspoken implications, as Fedor listens intently. He appears unfazed, embodying a calmness that makes those around him uneasy. It's a rare confidence that seems invulnerable to external pressures, suggesting he knows something they do not. Stubb proclaims that participation in sports is a matter of equality. Europe, he insists, must remain vigilant against potential threats from nations deemed toxic. Each word is delivered with a booming authority, and yet the hall transforms into a cocoon of hushed anticipation. As Fedor absorbs the gravity of Stubb's statements, he quickly becomes aware that the silence isn't one of agreement, it brims with a collective expectation for something more. Finally, the moment arrives. Fedor stands, his presence commanding attention. Instead of hostility, he radiates a calm resolve. He refrains from rushing into his response, allowing the silence to stretch as if it were an unbreakable moment. He is not about to rush with bravado, Instead, he chooses his words with deliberate precision, understanding that in silence, every word gains weight. Suddenly, he delivers a provocative question that hangs in the air like a bolt of lightning. Since when did sports become a platform for political maneuvering? The ripple of shock reverberates through the crowd. Faces turn, eyes widen, and the tension morphs into an electric charge. What will follow could change the future of sports forever. Will his daring challenge summon further conflicts, or can it bridge the divides? In the heart of a tense European summit, Fedor Yemelianenko stood like a statue, imposing and resolute. Silence enveloped the room as he prepared to disrupt the diplomatic decorum. He had not come here to evade confrontation, he sought to challenge the very essence of what sport represented in a world ravaged by politics. The atmosphere crackled with tension, each heartbeat resonating in anticipation. With a pause that felt monumental, Fedor took a deep breath. The collected figures around him awaited his words, but those who held power felt the air shift. Then, he spoke, his voice cut through the tension like a knife. At what point did sport, a bastion of strength and spirit, become a mere platform for political theatrics? Each word was deliberate, laced with an unwavering conviction. It was a question that echoed, stirring unease in the room. His remarks, devoid of aggression yet biting, cast a spell over the attendees. Eyes shifted nervously, some looked towards their hands, others dared to glance up, disquiet etched across their faces. What followed felt like ripples in a pond, each circle expanding with gravity. Sport is about unity, Fedor stated firmly. Values exist when rules apply equally to everyone. When those rules are selectively enforced, they become tools of selfish interests rather than the integrity of competition. His calm demeanor suggested he was unfazed by the brewing storm around him. Spent years in the arena teetered in his recall, moments of triumph and despair. He understood that glory didn't wear a flag, nor did it concern itself with political affiliations. It was pure power, the struggle against isolation in competition. A charge surged through the audience as he challenged them. Why do you create rules that athletes never signed up for? Fedor's gaze met that of the Finnish presidents, a challenge embedded in their eye contact. The silence that followed was almost deafening, thick with disbelief and reflection. In that moment, Fedor laid out the darkest reality of the sport, fear. The fear that crushed dreams over mere nationality no longer belonged on the arena. What you call morality, I call discrimination, he declared, and that statement ignited murmurs of unrest throughout the hall. Applause reverberated as he pressed on. Do you truly embody the spirit of sport, or have you surrendered it to political expediency? Recognize the shame in claiming moral high ground when your actions prove otherwise. Suddenly, a respected diplomat stood up, catching the room off guard. The tension augmented, a voice emerged from the darkness, ready to counter Fedor's accusations. The air hung thick with uncertainty. What awaited the gathered officials was not merely another opinion, but a challenge to their understanding of integrity. As applause began to rise, Fedor faced this new challenger, ready for what could derail the narrative he'd just spun. And the audience held its breath. Who would emerge victorious in this war of ideals? Remember how Fedor challenged the twisted rules, pointing out that when athletes fear banishment just for their birthplace, it's not sport, it's pure discrimination, masked as moral high ground, cutting deeper than any body blow could ever reach. Imagine the electric hush in that grand hall, where the first sharp murmur rippled like a warning wave through icy air, familiar, dreadfully ordinary, like the eerie creak of metal under ocean depths, pressure building until it squeezes the breath from bones. Finland's president, Alexander Stubb, shifted forward, his features tightening, ready to unleash a counterstrike with that smug politician's poise. But Fedor Yemelianenko didn't let him seize the tempo, his words advancing like a shadow glide over glass, steady, unhurried, as if striding into forbidden waters where only the unshakable belong, no rush, no falter. You claim Europe mustn't turn a blind eye, Fedor pressed, his tone silken but unyielding, layering tension that hung thick, scented with unease and the faint metallic tang of power imbalances. Fine. Then let's recall, how often has the so-called world family shut its eyes just to suit convenience? Entire nations barred from the sporting fray without a single question raised. These are the poisons that devour from within, hollowing out the spirit until it's nothing but a brittle shell. He paused then, a deliberate breath that transformed the room's mood. The president's easy trust evaporated, doubt slithering between the seated rows like fog through cracks, impossible to banish with diplomatic shields or protocol's thin veil. Fedor leaned closer to the mic, his voice dropping to a timbre of quiet resolve. I'm not here to drag anyone down. But I refuse to watch respect for this pure arena erode, not my homeland, not the warriors from elsewhere craving the same fight. Prove your worth on the mat, where rules are fair and fists speak truth. No theatrics in his delivery, no flashy roars, just raw honesty that amplified the drama far beyond cheers or staged shows. Applause? Reserved for frauds on stages. Here, it was stark rebellion, a moderator scrambling to regain control, protocols cracking under the weight of shifting tides. And right then, a new timbre sliced the air, not the Nordic lilt nor Western cadence, but a diplomatic edge from Hungary. Mr. Moderator, grant me the floor after Mr. Yemelianenko, the envoy requested, voice even yet commanding a storm's quiet fury. Journalists' heads jerked up in unison, nostrils flaring at the thrill of brewing chaos, like the scent of gunpowder before a fuse ignites. Stubb fidgeted in his seat, his shrug too careful, the air now crackling with the promise of battles untold. What hidden truths would this intruder unearth, and who would stumble next into Fedor's unflinching gaze? The forum had transformed into a battleground of ideals. Moments after an impassioned speech, a diplomat from Hungary stood and addressed the gathering, declaring his intent to speak after Fedor Yemelianenko. His calm words sent ripples through the crowd. The journalists perked up, their senses sharpened. The faint scent of coffee mingled with the tension in the air as they anticipated his thoughts. This was more than just talk. This was an arena of belief and challenge, where the very essence of sport was under siege. As Fedor stepped outside for a brief hiatus, the atmosphere changed. He took a moment to breathe in the cool, conditioned air, the smell of stale coffee and worn upholstery surrounding him. It was a moment of reflection, a time to engage with his inner self. In the long corridor, with glass walls reflecting the myriad emotions swarming within, he could feel the weight of responsibility resting on his shoulders. Fedor recognized that every fight isn't merely about physical blows. It's about the pauses, the critical silence between actions, where true character is revealed. Europe found itself in a similar pause. Would it hide in the shadows, or would it confront the truth head-on? Upon his return, he noted the diplomat, a wiry man with nervous gestures, standing poised at the mic, a figure not only of politics but of collective memory. His name was Laszlo. His voice, not resonating with the usual political rhetoric, instead carried the echoes of shared experiences. I heard everything that has been said here, he began, and the weight of his statement hung palpably in the air. As he spoke of the sport that had united generations, he revealed that this discourse was not just about partisan divides. The essence of competition, the purity of spirit, and the shared passion for athletics were at risk. Fedor could feel the room's electric tension as Laszlo's words washed over the crowd, stirring emotions buried deep within. Would they understand? Would they rise to challenge the contrived ideologies that sought to fracture their unity? Is it fair, Laszlo questioned aloud, that the essence of sport should be tainted by nationality? It was a bold inquiry, a strike against the established narrative, and it resonated deeply. Could the audience see beyond their biases? Fedor watched, consuming every word, recognizing the gravity of the moment. Would they accept this challenge, or would they retreat into their comfortable ignorance? The atmosphere grew thicker as silence enveloped the room once again. Fedor could sense that the dialogue was shifting. The fight wasn't just about records, it was about the heart of sport itself, a battleground for values that define humanity. And then, Laszlo laid down his final assertion. We cannot abandon the true spirit of sport. His conclusion hung in the air, punctuated by Fedor's firm resolve. The battle lines were drawn, and it was more than a question of politics, it was a journey into the soul of competition, into the very fabric of their shared passion. The crowd braced for what came next. Would they stand united, or would divisions deepen? The outcome was uncertain, but the stakes had never been higher. Would Fedor rise to reclaim not just his dignity, but that of all who dared to compete with honor? This was just the beginning. Did you know that in a tense European summit, Fedor Yemelianenko once faced down the president of Finland with words so sharp, they silenced an entire hall full of officials? What hidden truth exploded that day, threatening to reshape global sports forever? Buckle up for a story of quiet strength, bitter betrayals, and a fighter who wouldn't back down. In the previous moment, Fedor Yemelianenko rose to speak, his calm gaze piercing the room as he challenged the hypocrisy of political sport bans, exposing hidden agendas that crushed true athletes. Fedor's lips curled into a brief, knowing smile. 2 lines etched deeper on his weathered face. It mirrored the grin of a warrior acknowledging a foe's bold strike. The dignitaries on the dais flinched, their polished composure cracking. They hadn't anticipated this counter from within Europe itself, a Hungarian diplomat seizing the moment. This man, forged in the rough crucible of hockey rinks, stood with unwavering balance, no trace of fear or flattery. He thanked the moderator crisply, then gripped the microphone. "I'll keep this short. Straightforward. Unlike some here, I speak not just for my government. I speak for every athlete gripped by doubt." The air in the hall thickened, carrying the faint, sharp scent of uncertainty, like ozone before a storm. Why has sport become a weapon for bullies, when it should lift us all? The diplomat's voice resonated, steady and low, each syllable a tactile press against the room's rigid protocol. Chairs creaked softly as listeners shifted, fabrics whispering secrets of unease. A rhetorical question hung there. Can Europe truly champion fairness while twisting rules for its own games? The diplomat stepped aside amid polite applause, his words a quiet victory lap. But a storm brewed beneath. As Fedor approached, their hands met in a firm clasp, no words needed. The contact spoke volumes, defying the sterile buzz of cameras and the metallic tang of tension in the air. "Thank you," Fedor murmured, his tone a silken thread of resolve. "You voiced what everyone fears to say. You're afraid to speak truth. But today, you took that crucial first step." Fedor inclined his head, not in rage, but with the precision of a master scout surveying a battlefield that stretched far beyond this room. Can one voice truly ignite a revolution in how we see sports, Sol? Around them, journalists whispered urgently, laptops clacking like distant gunfire. The broadcast feeds pulsed with raw honesty, unfiltered by diplomatic cages. Alexander Stubb, the Finnish president, slumped in his seat, papers crumpling like defeated flags in his grasp, his face etched with weariness. He leaned forward to reclaim the mic, only for the moderator to intervene. "By procedure, we move to the Canadian delegate." Stubb nodded, a small, forced gesture that masked deep turmoil. But his eyes betrayed a flicker, maybe desperation, maybe resolve. Rising next was Michael Carter, a tall, broad-shouldered figure from Canada, exuding the cold allure of a sea eagle soaring over icy shores. His smile was practiced, a shield honed by years and stern negotiations. He approached without fanfare, his heavy footsteps echoing off marble floors. As cameras zoomed in, capturing every nuance, the room smelled of possibility, or peril. What seismic shift would this new voice unleash against Fedor's quiet defiance? In a moment that will echo through sports history, Fedor Yemelianenko emerged in the European summit, a tense atmosphere charged with expectation and uncertainty. Just 5 minutes prior, he boldly snatched a mask from European officials, his defiance reverberating as he proclaimed something so powerful it silenced the room. What Yemelianenko said had the potential to reshape the landscape of global sports forever. Picture this, a hall filled with prominent figures, politicians, and sports leaders, all gathered amidst a sea of flags and blinding lights. Here was a man who understood the weight of his words, whose presence commanded respect. Yemelianenko wasn't just a fighter, he was a symbol of resilience, a warrior forged by countless hours of discipline and sacrifice. As he strode into the room, dressed simply yet elegantly, he carried with him a spirit unbroken by the struggles of the past. Inside that stark venue, Fedor took his place among dignitaries, his demeanor calm yet electric. As the Finnish president, Alexander Stubb, delivered an impassioned speech about values and the spirit of sport, Fedor's eyes glittered with a fierce intensity. Stubb spoke of unity and discipline in the world of competition, yet his words felt hollow in the face of unyielding truths. Then came Fedor's moment. He stood, grounding himself as he took in the room, where tension hung in the air like a thick fog. The silence was palpable, a vacuum of anticipation. At what point did sport abandon its essence, becoming merely a stage for political posturing? His voice cut through the tension like a blade, challenging the status quo. His question rippled throughout the assembly, drawing gasps and quickened breaths. People shifted in their seats, some unsure of how to react. Fedor pressed on. When did principles become instruments for selective morality? Each sentence he uttered deepened the silence, for inside that silence was a clarity that many in the room desperately needed to confront. As Fedor outlined the apparent hypocrisy within international sports governance, he described how athletes, once celebrated for their courage, now found themselves shackled by unseen chains of bias. Why should they suffer the consequences for politics? He questioned, his tone unwavering, invoking the raw emotion that lay beneath the surface of every athlete's struggle. Tension crackled as his passionate words ignited a fire in the hearts of those who listened. Audience members exchanged looks of shock, realization dawning that Fedor was gripping onto something more profound than a mere debate. He was restoring a lost honor. The president's face betrayed disbelief. Once adamant in his views, it was clear that Fedor's honest words cut deeper than any physical blow. Yet, the atmosphere wasn't just thick with anticipation, it was charged with the potential for change, an awakening moment. As silence descended, a Canadian diplomat named Michael Carter, with confident poise, rose to the challenge. He rebutted, not with fury but with undeniable conviction, reminding the assembly of hockey's role as a cultural touchstone, a privilege, not a platform for political theater. With each redirection of focus from sport's legacy to its integrity, both men held the audience wrapped in a battle of ideals, one seeking to uphold sport's sanctity, the other, entangled in a web of political advancement. As his voice resonated, it became clear, Fedor Yemelianenko was challenging not just a room full of leaders, but the very framework of competitive spirit itself. In this charged moment, the question remained, would they choose solidarity with ideals or continue to compromise the essence of sport for fleeting power? The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, leaving the future of sports hanging in the balance. Who would emerge victorious amid this ideological clash? 5 minutes ago, a sensational event unfolded during the European summit. Fedor Yemelianenko, a name that strikes a chord in the sports world, brazenly lifted a mask from the faces of European officials. He then boldly placed the president of Finland, Alexander Stubb, under scrutiny with a single, spine-chilling question. What Yemelianenko said resonated throughout the hall, leaving a silence so deep one could hear a pin drop. This one statement could reshape the landscape of global sports forever. Stick around, you won't believe how the story unfolds. In an arena filled with dignitaries and politicians, Fedor emerged not as a conqueror driven by past victories but as a fighter harnessed by unyielding commitment. Rising from the shadows of countless hours of hard work, he walked into the hall draped in a simple but elegant dark suit that spoke volumes about his character. His demeanor exuded a confidence that wasn't rooted in ego but in principles. No flashy accessories or empty bravado, just pure resolve. As he entered Helsinki's cold, glassy atmosphere, surrounded by representatives of various athletic committees, emotions ran high. The air buzzed with the tension of recorded performances, soaring ambitions, and unspoken fears. The ideal of sportsmanship was wrapped in nostalgia, conjuring memories of what used to truly matter, the spirit of competition. But that day, the uncomfortable truth lurked beneath the surface as Yemelianenko determined not to be silenced. When he took his place, he sensed a palpable tension, akin to the electrifying atmosphere just before a race. His calmness was disarming. He wasn't there to make enemies, he was there to hold a mirror to society's flaws. After Finland's president waxed on about European values and ideals, discussing the exclusion of certain nations from the sporting arena, Fedor prepared his response. He understood the stakes. As a seasoned competitor, he took a measured approach before speaking, embodying the wisdom that those who truly understand the game do not waste time on bravado. Finally, he stood and asked a simple yet profound question: when did sports become a platform for political games instead of a celebration of human spirit? The silence that followed echoed with varying degrees of discomfort. Some delegates squirmed, others stifled their reactions. Fedor's words hung in the air, demanding recognition that transcended borders and biases. He continued, his voice steady and unwavering: athletes on the field do not represent merely the flags they bear, they embody the essence of competition itself. His words were not just an emotional outburst, they were rooted in decades of experience and sacrifice. Why impose rules that hinder athletes based on situations beyond their control? Discrimination disguised as morality is no morality at all. A hush fell over the room. The tension escalated as Fedor pressed on, confronting the hypocrisy of those who wielded politics like a sword rather than a shield for the spirit of sport. He appealed not just to emotion but to the heart of competition itself. At that moment, the president's composure faltered, and a glint of fear crossed his face. Fedor saw this and seized the opportunity, reminding everyone that the spirit of competition should unite, not divide. The championship without the strongest is merely a shadow of itself. Why should we discredit the dreams of young athletes just for the sake of political convenience? As whispers morphed into murmurs, Fedor caught a glimpse of the weight of his words settling in. Silence transformed from mere absence of sound to an intense pressure, a wave of collective introspection washing over the hall. Discussions about integrity clashed with political agendas, and it was clear that Yemelianenko was igniting a fire that would be difficult to extinguish. And just as it seemed things would spiral further into silence, a voice from Hungary broke through the tension, signaling a looming confrontation and an unexpected twist in this high-stakes narrative. Would the conversation veer towards resolution or ignite further disputes? The future of sport hung in the balance, and the atmosphere crackled with uncertainty. In a tense atmosphere, Fedor Yemelianenko, the legendary fighter, stood in the European summit, a battleground of ideologies rather than fists. Just moments earlier, he had made a shocking statement that echoed through the hall, leaving guests and officials alike in a state of disbelief. Daring to confront authority, he challenged the very fabric of international sports politics. 5 minutes before, Fedor had stolen the show, declaring a question that would ripple through the corridors of power: when did sports succumb to the clutches of political deception? His words hung heavy in the air, marking a shift from mere discussion to confrontation. In a place filled with dignitaries, his presence was electric, amplifying the stakes of the conversation. As he surveyed the room, Fedor's demeanor was that of a seasoned fighter. He was calm, yet the tension surrounding him crackled like static before a thunderstorm. The president of Finland, Alexander Stubb, previously so poised, shifted uncomfortably. He spoke of values and sportsmanship but failed to see the irony of his own words. Fedor, steadfast and confident, awaited his turn, knowing that the upcoming exchange could alter the perception of the sporting world forever. When finally given the chance to speak, Fedor seized the moment. "You say we must uphold the integrity of sports," he began, his voice steady but piercing. "But tell me, who is truly upholding the values? How can we pretend that sports exist separate from the political turmoil affecting athletes worldwide?" Now the tension in the hall thickened, like an impending storm ready to unleash chaos. As Fedor pressed on, he stirred the emotions within the audience. "You preach equality," he declared, "yet what about the athletes who suffer from discrimination in the name of nationalism? Is this the reality you choose, while waving the flag of morality?" The weight of his words struck critical nerves, igniting whispers of dissent among his listeners. The president's facade began to falter under Fedor's relentless questioning. As the atmosphere shifted, eyes widened and hearts raced. Would this dissent lead to unity for the athletes, or would it provoke an unspeakable backlash from those in power? Then, from a corner of the room, a Hungarian diplomat rose to challenge Fedor directly, tearing through the tension with a determined voice. You speak of values, but what about accountability? His challenge hung in the air, unanswered for the moment, as the room held its collective breath. Fedor smiled, knowing that the real fight was just beginning. He wouldn't let this opportunity slip away. How would he respond to the diplomat's challenge? Would he conquer the ideological battlefield as he did in the ring, or find himself entangled in a web of political rhetoric? Now, the fate of sports as a harmonious arena hangs in the balance, teetering on the edge of societal expectations and personal convictions. One question loomed over the gathering: was this the moment that would spark a revolution, or simply deliver regret? As the debate intensified, Fedor Yemelianenko challenged the very foundation of their authority, questioning who granted them the power to judge entire nations and label personal accountability as collective punishment. The room tensed. The president's interruption came too late, leaving Fedor's words echoing like an unyielding verdict. Imagine this: what if the heart of competition, once pure and unbreakable, was now crumbling under the weight of hidden agendas? Could one man's unfiltered truth expose a global hypocrisy that shatters illusions? The air in the Helsinki summit hall grew thick, heavy with the scent of polished wood and fresh coffee from nearby tables, as Fedor's voice cut through like a sharpened blade. His words carried a gravity that pressed against every chest, a quiet storm building in the dim glow of overhead lights. You claim sport mirrors the world, he began, his tone steady, eyes locking onto President Stubbs. Fine. Then why force it to follow the world's flawed rules? Those aren't the highest ideals. Sport has always taught our youth discipline, respect for rivals, graceful acceptance of loss. Are we now rewriting that code to justify today's divisions? The president's face flushed, the cool draft from the vents brushing his skin like a warning chill. He shifted in his seat, the leather creaking softly under him. No one's attacking morals, Stubb retorted quickly, his voice straining against the pause Fedor had masterfully created. We uphold them. But Fedor fired back without hesitation, the rhythm of his speech pulling the audience deeper, like the pull of a gathering tide. You uphold morals when it suits you, when flags align. Yet you deny entry where politics clash, hiding behind banners instead of facing the arena. That's not safeguarding ideals. It's fear disguised as principle. Fear, always cloaked in noble words, shielding weakness from its own reflection. The hush that followed felt suffocating, dense as fog rolling in from the Baltic Sea outside, muffling whispers and stifling breaths. Stubb sat exposed, his composed facade cracking like thin ice under pressure. He gripped the table edge, knuckles whitening, desperate to reclaim ground, but Fedor's logic eroded it layer by layer, circling like an unrelenting shadow. Sport must rise above, Fedor pressed on, his voice firm yet measured, resonating off the high ceilings. Politicians should too. But what you're pushing isn't elevation, it's fracture. And worst of all, you're draping it in the banner of values, twisting a sacred term into something shameful, a veil for exclusion. The hall absorbed his words, the faint hum of air conditioning the only sound, amplifying the raw tension in every heartbeat. Stubb leaned forward, mouth opening for a counterstrike, but the moderator's hand shot up, sharp, unyielding. Observe protocol, he commanded, his tone slicing the air like a gavel's crack. Mr. Yemelianenko, conclude your point, then we'll open questions. Fedor nodded calmly, a subtle smile touching his lips, exuding the poise of a warrior who's already claimed the field. Trust me, my ideas are straightforward. If you preach values, live them. If morality, embody honesty. If rules, apply them equally, to all. Not just the favored. Otherwise, you're dismantling trust. Not in nations or federations, but in sport itself. Faith thrives on fairness, on honoring even adversaries. On justice that binds us. For the first time that forum, applause didn't erupt. Instead, a profound quiet settled, jagged thoughts racing like wind before thunder, leaving everyone on the edge. What alliance would break next in this verbal battlefield? Minutes ago at a European summit, a tense atmosphere hung in the air. Fedor Yemelianenko made headlines by stealing the spotlight and a mask from European officials. He then presented the president of Finland with a chilling statement that left the room in stunned silence. What followed could reshape the world of sports forever. In a world filled with uncertainty and shadow, Fedor's presence was magnetic. Picture this, a man who didn't need to speak loudly to command attention. He entered the hall as a lion, exuding calm and determination, his years of training etched into his expression. He wore a simple, dark suit, it was unadorned, yet it spoke volumes about his character. Fedor had no time for showmanship, he believed in the power of silence and precision. As he surveyed the assembly filled with officials and representatives from various nations, he felt the weight of history pressing upon him. Fedor listened intently as Alexander Stubb, the Finnish president, spoke eloquently about values, envisioning a world of unity in sports. Yet behind the polished words lay an uncomfortable truth, the toll politics took on the purity of competition. When Fedor finally stood to speak, the tension in the hall was palpable. He began slowly, letting a heavy silence stretch. Ladies and gentlemen, when did sports lose its essence? When did it become a stage for political plays? Values should mean enforcing rules equally for all athletes, he asserted, his voice steady yet resonant, stirring questions in the minds of everyone present. His words cut deep, unraveling the facade of civility. Murmurs erupted, how dare he challenge the status quo? You cannot hide behind diplomacy when decisions compromise the integrity of sport, Fedor continued, his gaze unwavering. What we are seeing is not justice, but a manipulation of power that denies fairness to athletes based on their national origins. The audience was entranced, some uncomfortable, while others engaged. What if, tomorrow, we all faced the same fate? Fedor posed, letting that sobering thought linger. A diplomat from a northern country rose, provoking an uncomfortable wave of anticipation. Mr. President, if moral values are universal, why do we selectively apply them? This was a scalpel cut through the rising tension. The hall buzzed as Fedor nodded, acknowledging the question's weight. The true measure of strength, he knew, lay in the feet of athletes, not the whims of officials. Silence transformed into contemplation. What Fedor was stating was not mere rhetoric, it was a call for truth. This isn't about national pride but about lifting the spirit of competition. As the moderator raised his hand for order, uncertainty lingered. Fedor's unyielding stance ignited passionate debate. Would the audience rally behind him, or would fear prevail? This was the moment that could redefine everything. Would the souls of sportsmen stand tall before the looming shadow of political manipulation? With every word spoken, the stakes grew higher, and the audience braced for an unprecedented clash of ideals. What awaited them was more than just a discussion, it was the dawning of a new era for sports. A reckoning that could either unify or divide them. How would this confrontation conclude? The answers lay just beyond the horizon of their expectations. At first, Fedor glanced at Stubbs with a piercing respect. Then, the moderator's voice cut through the tension. Mr. President, perhaps a brief response to these points before the next speaker? Stubbs grabbed the microphone. His voice trembled, weary and unsettled. Colleagues, you're forgetting we inhabit a harsh reality, not some flawless utopia. Sports can't escape politics entirely. Sometimes, tough choices must prevail. His words stung like a sharp retort, cold and precise. The hall buzzed with rising clamor. Or was it self-serving hypocrisy hitting home? Stubbs faltered. Fedor studied him intently, unmoved. He stood firm. He grasped it. In certain clashes, landing strikes isn't necessary. Sometimes, just force the adversary to truly listen. When he requested the floor again, the moderator yielded instantly, almost eagerly. Mr. Stubbs, addressing Fedor, you claim we exist in the real world, fair enough. But in that authentic world, any imposed barrier will eventually confront your children. What then? How do you justify it to them? Do you declare that you've stripped away their dreams, their radio, their politics, their culture? He stepped nearer. The gesture was subtle yet laden. He invaded a space Stubbs no longer controlled. Sports aren't pristine, Fedor continued. But that's precisely why they must aspire to elevation. Not merely endure the mundane, but transcend it. If your rules and our efforts lose all purpose. Excluding the mighty excludes the essence of sports itself. The gathering absorbed every syllable. It resonated not because it had to, but because it yearned to. Then Fedor delivered the line that fractured the fragile atmosphere. I implore you not to silence us. Don't banish yourself amid the exclusion. Quiet words, yet devastating. A shocking paradox, would Stubbs crumble further, or unleash a desperate counter? Whispers echoed through the hall, the scent of sweat mingling with perfumed tension. Skin prickled under flickering lights. Had Fedor just exposed a fatal chink in Europe's facade? The moderator hesitated, eyes darting. Suddenly, a diplomat from Hungary's voice sliced in, desperate for rebuttal. What seismic shift might this ignite next? In a setting thick with tension, Fedor Yemelianenko stood before a gathering of European officials, ready to disrupt the status quo. Just moments ago, he silently stole a mask representing the facade of unity among nations, a symbolic act that echoed through the hallowed halls of power. The president of Finland, speaking with grand gestures and polished words, was met with a haunting silence, his message drowned out by the storm brewing within Fedor's gaze. This was no ordinary meeting, it was a summit where the stakes of sportsmanship collided with the grit of politics. As the president droned on about values and the European path, Fedor's heart raced. He understood the depth of the conflict, not some trivial debate about records or teams, but a question of integrity and humanity itself. Observing the serious faces around him, he felt a rare calm, akin to a predator poised for the kill. Fedor's attire was simple yet powerful, a dark suit that spoke volumes without uttering a single word. He had learned that in the cacophony of superficial grandeur, true strength lay in silence. The moment the moderator announced the floor, Fedor rose, calm and deliberate. The attention shifted, the air was thick with anticipation. He paused, letting the silence amplify the weight of his impending words. In spaces like this, words were weapons, and he wielded them with precision. Gentlemen, at what point did sports transform from a noble pursuit into a mere tool for political theatrics? His voice cut through the heavy atmosphere, leaving gasps in its wake. A wave of reactions flowed through the room. Some shifted uncomfortably, others exchanged glances rife with shock. He continued, you speak of values, yet the rules seem to bend only when convenient. Discrimination masked as morality. How is this acceptable in a domain that should champion athleticism above all else? His words formed ripples of uncertainty. Fedor's intent was clear. He wasn't there to point fingers, or to scapegoat. No, he aimed to shake the very foundation upon which these discussions rested. Just then, a diplomat from Hungary quietly requested the floor, the tension escalating like a tightly coiled spring. As Fedor's gaze fell upon him, the atmosphere crackled with unresolved energy. What statement would follow? What reprisal awaited in this high-stakes game? The crowd held its breath, teetering on the edge of revelation, caught between fear and the promise of truth. Fedor's bold stand had just ignited the room, leaving whispers rippling like aftershocks from a heavyweight punch. But now, shadows gathered, diplomats plotting in hidden corners, ready to counter his unyielding truth. Fedor met the Hungarian's gaze head-on, no fleeing shadows, no frantic cries. Just raw light piercing the haze. Those words hung there, simple, unadorned, no phony posturing. Yet Laszlo grasped it instantly. Deep inside this man burned no urge to crush or halt others. No. A fierce drive to shatter the invisible barrier, to end the stale reek of political maneuvering that choked the air like smoke from a dying fire. Meanwhile, in a sealed side chamber, tension simmered hotter than before. A hushed debate unfolded. The Finnish president huddled at the table, flanked by sharp-eyed advisors, and the stern chief of a key European sports federation. His tone lightened now, softer than the plenary's sharp edges, almost casual. We can't let him burst into the spotlight like that, he murmured, voice smooth as polished ice. If even a few nations waver, we lose our grip entirely. He leaned forward, the scent of fresh coffee lingering from untouched cups, mingling with the faint, musty odor of old leather chairs. For the next round, prepare 2 strikes. First, sow seeds of doubt in his claims, make them crumble under scrutiny. Second, paint in dire shadow over Europe's sports tomorrow, if we yield. One advisor shifted, papers rustling softly under his fingers, skin prickling from the room's sudden chill. And frame the theses carefully, the president added, eyes narrowing. Turn Russia into mere nostalgic dreamers, clinging to faded glory. And this Hungarian, dismiss him as some wild emotional outlier. But Mr. President. An advisor interjected softly, his voice a careful whisper, hesitation thick in the air like fog rolling in from the Baltic Sea. No clear rebuttals here, the facts lean their way, solid as arena mats. The president paused, fingers drumming a slow rhythm on the table, the wood cool and unyielding beneath them. Then build the narrative, sidestep the stage. Sports? It's all about perception, the image we craft. Images don't need raw facts, they thrive on spin, on how we twist the tale. He delivered that line with iron certainty, the words echoing slightly off the paneled walls. In a different crowd, it might have sparked nods, even cheers. But here, it landed like a confession of frailty, vulnerability seeping through the cracks. In their eyes flickered that weary strain, the exhaustion of those cornered, defending the indefensible with logic that bent and broke. 40 minutes ticked by, each second heavy, the hall's clock ticking like a heartbeat in the quiet. Everyone filed back in, the atmosphere thicker now, denser than Helsinki's winter fog, pressing against chests like an invisible weight. Cameras swiveled smoothly, lenses zooming in on the president, capturing the subtle sheen of sweat on his brow under the spotlight's harsh glare. The moderator clutched his folder, as if shoving aside an unwelcome glare from the high windows, sunlight slicing through like accusatory blades. Colleagues, he announced, voice steady but edged with strain, the microphone humming faintly in the hush. We resume the session. Fedor settled at his table once more, posture unbowed, gaze steady and piercing, calm washing over him like cool rain on heated skin. He sensed it coming, not a straight clash, but a sly skirmish, shadows weaving through diplomatic tricks, arsenals of veiled barbs and half-truths. What shocking revelation would the president unleash next, to twist the truth and bury Fedor's fire? The room held its breath, teetering on the edge of upheaval. In a stunning moment just moments ago at the European summit, Fedor Yemelianenko stunned the audience by seizing a mask from the officials and confronting the president of Finland with just one phrase that plunged the hall into silence. What he disclosed could potentially alter the trajectory of international sports forever. Gear up for an incredible tale that will leave you stunned. As our story unfolds, there exists a person among us who embodies resilience amidst chaos, a figure approaching the summit undeterred, a silent warrior without a need for fanfare. Fedor Yemelianenko, standing in a dark suit, cut the typical image of a sportsman, one who prefers actions to words. With deep-set determination in his gaze, he radiated the mastery that stems from years of hardship. Each inch of him recounted a tale of grueling training, losses that forged him stronger, and victories that unveiled deeper truths about himself. In the heart of Helsinki, the venue reverberated with the tensions of numerous officials, each clutching their ambitions, fears, and political agendas tightly. Fedor sensed the undercurrents of deception and the unyielding need for honesty amidst an atmosphere thick with political rivalry. The room, filled with shimmering screens and swaying flags, buzzed with an energy that felt like a tightly coiled spring, ready to snap. As the Finnish president, Alexander Stubb, took the podium, the air turned electric. He proclaimed the virtues of European integrity, wrapping it in polished rhetoric, steering away from the harsh realities of political divides that plagued the sporting world. Fedor remained still, an unwavering stone amidst the storm. Every word from Stubb fell flat, devoid of substance, merely a script rehearsed too many times. All eyes shifted, they awaited the voice from the Russian side. When Fedor rose, the anticipation was palpable. He stood, a calm force, shunning the overt displays of fury or dissatisfaction. With a deliberate pause, he hung in silence, allowing the tension to mount before he spoke. "Tell me, when did sport become a vehicle for political grandstanding?" His question rang through the hall like a bell tolling for answers. The murmurs of discomfort rippled through the audience. It was a moment steeped in tension, his words weighed heavy against the usual pretensions of political correctness. Fedor's voice, smooth yet firm, continued, challenging the hypocrisy that envelopes the competition. "When athletes step into the arena, they leave politics at the door. They fight not for their countries, but against the odds, embodying the true spirit of sport." His assertiveness broke the established quiet, shaking the very foundation upon which their discourse rested. Each syllable he projected turned momentary glances into frowns of confusion and defiance. He challenged their judgments and compelled them to reconsider their choices. As he questioned why athletes were held to rules they didn't create, the audience felt the boundaries of discomfort blur. In that moment, Fedor did not just speak, he conjured a visceral connection to the very essence of sport, digging deep into the contradictions that underpinned the gathering. The room held its breath, suspended between disbelief and awe. With a twist, a representative from Hungary interrupted, calling for Fedor's words to be revisited, ready to respond to the unfolding tension. Would he ally or challenge? As the air thickened with anticipation, a page turned in a story that brought every listener to the edge of their seats, keenly aware that this exchange was far from over. What twist awaits next in this riveting confrontation? Only time will tell as the battle between diplomacy and the spirit of sport continues. Fedor sat in a tense room, his eyes scanning the gathering of officials. The air was thick with anticipation, a silence hanging like a taut wire about to snap. Moments earlier, he had heard declarations about values, that elusive concept, being bandied about, yet here he was, ready to challenge that very notion. Once the moderator gestured for him to speak, Fedor rose quietly, his demeanor serene amidst the brewing storm. "Thank you," he began, his voice steady, commanding respect without needing to demand it. "I appreciate that we're finally having an honest conversation after all the veiled attempts to obscure the truth. Who decided that political interests should infiltrate the realm of sports? Was it Russia, or perhaps those who exploit their authority by manipulating athletes? My presence here isn't to complain. I'm here to confront the exclusion that's been woven into the fabric of sport. Let's remember," Fedor continued, pacing slightly, allowing the cameras to frame his message. "If sport is not politics, then why entangle it within the corridors of power? By intertwining the two, you risk unraveling the very foundation on which it stands." His words broke through the silence, resonating with a depth that demanded attention rather than applause. "I stand not as a voice for my nation but as a guardian of the essence of sport, a territory where an athlete is judged solely on their merit, not their geopolitical identity. This isn't merely rhetoric. Dragging fairness into political machinations is akin to branding an honest game as a threat. Are we truly afraid of that honesty?" Fedor fixed his gaze on the president, his tone unwavering. "What frightens you isn't just politics, it's the raw truth that gives every athlete the chance to write their own story instead of simply participating in someone else's." This was a calculated strike, aimed not at individuals but at the very ethos that governed the forum. A commissioner attempted to interject, yet Fedor's voice shifted to a calm, unyielding, firm tone. "You suggest I've called for a retreat, but allow me to question, when did forward movement become synonymous with retreat? Where are the officials brave enough to stand up for integrity?" While some may fall silent, cracks echoed through the hall. It was becoming clear, Fedor was not merely voicing discontent, he was igniting a spark that could very well change the landscape of sports as they knew it. The tension was palpable, and the room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Would his message resonate with those in power? Or was this moment merely a fleeting flicker in the overwhelming darkness of political maneuvering? As Fedor stood there, the unbroken confidence surged within him. What would unfold next could be nothing short of monumental. In a thrilling moment that rattled the foundations of sports governance, Fedor Yemelianenko, a titan of discipline and ferocity, stood before Europe's most powerful figures. Moments before, he had stolen the limelight, diverting attention from the usual rhetoric swirling around politics and sports. When he dared to confront the so-called leaders of European sports, the chamber fell into an eerie silence. What he revealed next altered perceptions and threatened the very fabric of global athletics. A standoff of ideals. Yemelianenko, clad in a dark suit that spoke of purpose without ostentation, entered the hall like a force of nature. Confidence radiated from his every move, reminiscent of years of relentless training mixed with the wisdom of hard-earned victories and losses alike. The atmosphere thickened with anticipation as the president of Finland, Alexander Stubb, delivered a speech that reverberated with political undertones but lacked authenticity. As he spoke, Yemelianenko remained still, his piercing gaze absorbing the spectacle. Stubb preached about the values of sportsmanship and the European consensus, hardly acknowledging the lurking discontent stirred by his words. The air turned tense, heavy with the underlying truth that Yemelianenko was about to unleash. He rose, undaunted by the scrutiny of those who deemed him an outlier. This was not merely about winning a verbal duel, it was about preserving the integrity of a domain he revered. Yemelianenko's question pierced through the veneer of established norms. At what point did sport become a platform for political posturing? The hall reacted, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Here was a voice rising against the tide of complacency, demanding accountability where none was provided. Beneath the surface he continued, his words deliberate and measured. Values exist when rules apply equally to all, he stated, challenging the establishment's hypocrisy. The murmurs turned into a gasp as he laid bare the uncomfortable truth, that those in power had abused their influence, corrupting the essence of sport in favor of personal or political gain. His passion ignited something primal in the hearts of those present. They began to understand that he wasn't just standing for himself, he was an unwilling champion for every athlete sidelined by the whims of politics. The air grew electric with emotion, betrayal, fear, and hope intertwined, rattling even the most steadfast of officials. But just as the room absorbed the weight of Yemelianenko's convictions, the moderator attempted to regain control. Yet, hesitation lingered. The delicate fabric of alliances began to teeter on the brink of chaos. The pressure mounts. A momentary pause gripped the assembly, a psychological standoff, as Fedor walked out into the foyer. Frozen snowflakes danced in the air, mirroring the chilling tension he had left behind. With every step, he contemplated the battle ahead, where every word could shift power dynamics. As he gazed at the snowy backdrop, doubts crept in. Was he prepared for the turbulent waves about to follow? Suddenly, he was approached by Michael Carter, a Canadian diplomat with whom he had exchanged brief but meaningful words earlier. They shared an understanding deeper than most established allies, recognizing that real battles were won not just in arenas but in the minds of those watching. Carter recounted to him the vulnerability of the facade representing their system, a reminder that beneath the surface, fear of a breach could unravel everything. "Your formula, it resonates," he acknowledged, voicing support as they plotted a new path forward, one forged in truth instead of fear. Yemelianenko felt a surge of resolve. This fight was far from over, and the chess game of ideals had only just begun. Would he emerge as the phoenix rising from the ashes of political deception? Or would the powers that be extinguish his fire before it could even burn bright? As he prepared to return to the fray, a haunting question echoed within him: what legacy would he leave behind in the ring of world sports? In a world where high-stakes games unfold behind closed doors, tensions simmer just beneath the surface. Moments ago, at a prestigious European gathering, Fedor Yemelianenko made headlines by snatching a mask from officials and confronting the president of Finland in an unprecedented fashion. His words had the potential to reshape the landscape of global sports forever. As silence engulfed the room, murmurs of astonishment spread like wildfire. Fedor, an embodiment of resilience, radiated calm amidst chaos. He encapsulated the spirit of countless hours spent training, adorned not in flamboyance but in simple black attire that spoke of authenticity rather than superficiality. He stepped into the arena of officials, where politicians often tangled words with veiled meanings. The air buzzed with anticipation, a tension thick enough to cut with a knife. His presence demanded respect, not through bluster but through sheer presence. He wasn't just another voice in the crowd, he was the calm in the storm, ready to redefine the dialogue on international competition. The Finnish president began to deliver a carefully scripted address, extolling the virtues of sport devoid of political taint. However, Fedor remained unmoved, his steady gaze challenging the hypocrisy woven into the fabric of their rhetoric. In his heart, a tempest brewed, a desire to reclaim the purity of sport from the clutches of political maneuvering. "Tell me," Fedor posed, his voice echoing through the hall, "when did sport become a mere podium for political agendas?" The question hung in the air, piercing through the facade of civility that had enveloped them. He forced the audience to confront an uncomfortable truth, that the essence of sport had been overshadowed by fear and control. Fedor pressed on, his words deliberate and measured. Fear isn't an ally to the spirit of competition. It empties the soul of true values, turning athletes into pawns of a larger game. Each word resonated, creating ripples of realization among the spectators, who now felt a sense of accountability looming over them. Yet, just as Fedor was gaining momentum, a new voice emerged from the shadows, a Hungarian diplomat, poised to challenge him. The scene was set for an explosive exchange that would either elevate Fedor's message or drown it in the cynical tides of diplomacy. Would Fedor's truth withstand the pressure, or would the intricate web of politics suffocate his call for integrity in sport? The answer remained tantalizingly out of reach as the air crackled with anticipation. In a dramatic scene from the recent European summit, Fedor Yemelianenko did something that would change the landscape of sports forever. Just 5 minutes before, he boldly took a mask from European officials and made a shocking statement to the president of Finland. The room fell silent. What he said could ripple through the world of athletics. Stick around to hear the full story, it's going to be astonishing. Imagine a gathering filled with powerful figures, political agendas swirling like leaves caught in an autumn storm. Fedor Yemelianenko emerged from a rare breed, possessing a remarkable blend of humility and ferocity. He walked into the hall with confidence that felt almost tangible, a silent promise of strength juxtaposed with a burden of history. In a space charged with anticipation, the murmurs of delegates faded into the background. Gazes were locked on him. There was a powerful energy, a mix of respect and trepidation rippling through the air. The voice of the president of Finland cut through the quiet, discussing ideals and standards as if they could quasi-magically resolve conflicts. But the mood was grim, the words felt more like a smokescreen than a solution. Fedor listened intently, absorbing the weight of the moment. His stillness held a mesmerizing quality that left his neighbors uneasy. It was as though they could sense the storm brewing within him. How could a world that prides itself on sporting excellence stoop to mere politics? This was the question that lingered in the air like a silent challenge. As the president concluded his remarks, he implied that any dissent would undermine the integrity of their united front. But then came Fedor's moment. He rose, exuding the calm of a seasoned warrior. He lingered a heartbeat longer in silence, allowing the tension to thicken, which felt almost electric. It was a calculated pause, a space where every person seated felt the gravity of the situation. When he finally spoke, his question would echo through the room: at what point did sports become a mere stage for political theatrics? His voice sliced through the layers of pretense, an undeniable truth surfacing from the depths of political machinations. The room shifted as eyes widened. The hushed breaths were punctuated by the unsteady heartbeats of those who sensed the imminent collapse of their carefully constructed narrative. Could Fedor's words rally the spirit of honest competition against a backdrop of fear and bias? The air grew thick with palpable apprehension as he continued, shedding light on the hypocrisy cloaked within their declarations of unity. Everyone in the hall felt it, like a drumbeat of resonating truth, pushing them toward confrontation. As he elaborated on the discrimination manifesting under the guise of morality, a sense of urgency gathered momentum. The diplomats around him squirmed, their discomfort buzzing like static electricity. Fedor was on the brink of igniting a revolution in sports, and the unexpected response from one delegate would turn the tide. "Mr. Moderator," called out a calm but assertive diplomat from Hungary, "I must respond to Mr. Yemelianenko." The room held its breath. With the unexpected ripple of this new voice, the atmosphere crackled with potential change. Would Fedor's stand herald a new dawn, or would it drown in the waves of bureaucratic indifference? Each moment counted. The unfolding drama at this summit would affect every athlete and sports enthusiast worldwide. Pressure built as the underlying conflict of values swirled. Would the truth triumph, or would it vanish under the weight of political agendas? The next round of this debate would define not just the future of sports, but the essence of integrity itself. How long could the facade hold before it shattered completely? In a dramatic twist at the European summit, legendary fighter Fedor Yemelianenko made headlines by stealing the spotlight from European dignitaries. Moments before, the president of Finland delivered a polished speech laced with concerns about international sports, emphasizing unity while subtly casting a shadow over athletes from specific nations. The atmosphere crackled with tension and expectation. Everyone in the grand hall held their breath, sensing that Yemelianenko was about to shatter the carefully composed facade. Imagine the contrast of cool, sterile walls adorned with flags, and the palpable heat radiating from seated delegates. They were powerful figures, expected to adhere to a certain decorum, yet every eye now shifted toward Yemelianenko as he stood tall, embodying strength without the need for bravado. His presence alone seemed to challenge the very norms set by this elite gathering. In a moment of silence, he began to speak. His voice, calm yet authoritative, posed a striking question. At what point did sports evolve from celebrating human spirit and strength into a stage for political theatrics? His words ricocheted off the walls, stirring murmurs and nervous glances among officials. The tension was tangible, the air thick with anticipation. "I have dedicated my life to this sport," he continued, his gaze sweeping across the room. "In the arena, no one cares about your nationality or political affiliations. What matters is the resilience of the human spirit." Fedor's conviction hung in the air, inviting reflection amidst the fray of politics and power plays. The president's speech had played to the crowd's emotions, but Yemelianenko's response cut deeper, a blade forged from years of experience and the raw truth of competition. Audience members shifted uneasily, grappling with the implications of his statements, as if they were suddenly unmasked. Could their comfortable consensus withstand this moment of stark honesty? Before anyone could respond, he leaned in further, asserting, "You speak of protection, but who are you really protecting? Only those unwilling to confront their own injustices?" His fierce questioning pierced through the diplomatic niceties previously presented. The room felt charged, a sleeping giant awakening amid the tension. As his words echoed, the moderator's demeanor shifted, caught off guard by the unexpected challenge to authority. The air was electric, a true showdown was brewing. Who would dare counter Fedor's unwavering challenge to the very fabric of their elite assembly? In a moment of intense drama at the European summit, an unexpected event unfolded. Fedor Yemelianenko, a figure of resilience and integrity, stole the spotlight by taking a daring stance against the backdrop of political maneuvering. His bold action shocked the assembly, particularly when he challenged the Finnish president, Alexander Stubb, with words that reverberated through the room like a thunderclap. As tensions ran high, an air of silence hung over the audience, with the weight of anticipation palpable in the atmosphere. Fedor Yemelianenko had a reputation for confronting uncomfortable truths. He stood unflinchingly, his demeanor calm and calculated. What he would say next had the potential to reshape the landscape of global sports and politics. In Helsinki, surrounded by representatives from various nations, the discourse became a battlefield of ideologies. The sport, which once symbolized unity, was now tainted by political biases. Fedor observed as the president spoke of values and unity, words that, while beautiful, masked a troubling reality. "You speak of courage as if it lies in retreat," Fedor began, his voice steady yet powerful. "But true courage is standing firm when the world encourages you to yield." The room stirred at his provocative assertion. He pointedly questioned the hypocrisy underlying the sport's governance, questioning whether we really believed in fairness. You wish for silence, yet that silence breeds destruction, he continued, pressing on. His words were not gestures of aggression but rather clarion calls to a world too comfortable with mediocrity. As he spoke of respect within the competitive arena, the audience felt the tension rise, hearts pounding with the realization of the stakes involved. Sport should be about truth and fairness, Fedor urged, not dogma and division. When did we allow our arenas to fall prey to political charades? He bravely challenged the established norms, stating emphatically that fear should never dictate the path of sport. His words struck the audience like an arrow. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others leaned in, drawn to the intensity of his argument. Fedor's insistence that athletes should unite in their struggle for integrity sent ripples through the room, challenging the status quo. Just as Fedor's message hit its apex, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. The moderator glanced nervously, sensing the tide turning against him. But the tension escalated further when a voice from the back, a diplomat from Hungary, called for attention, demanding a response to Fedor's powerful speech. What would unfold next? Would the summit descend into chaos, or could Fedor's courageous stand inspire a new beginning? The stakes were at an all-time high. In a tense atmosphere at the European summit, a moment unfolded that would send shockwaves through the world of sports. Fedor Yemelianenko, a figure shrouded in mystery and respect, confronted the authorities seated before him with an unexpected defiance. Just moments ago, he had stolen the spotlight, not with a flashy display, but with a stark and piercing question that echoed in the room. What transforms a stage of athleticism into a battleground of political agendas? Yemelianenko's gaze, steady and calm, held the weight of countless hours of training and sacrifice. As he stepped forward, each gaze in the hall turned toward him like arrows aimed at a vulnerable target. Would he risk everything to defend the sanctity of sports? The quiet tension was palpable, one could almost hear the collective breath being held. Suddenly, the president of Finland, Alexander Stubb, with his polished confidence, began to preach about values and the integrity of sport. His words danced around the subject like a delicate ballet, but Yemelianenko felt the underlying emptiness behind them. As he listened, his resolve grew. He knew he had to break the silence. Standing up, he let his thoughts simmer, allowing the air around him to thicken with expectation. When did sport, once a celebration of human spirit, devolve into a puppet show for political maneuvering? His voice bore no aggression, just a raw sincerity that pierced through the drawn-out rhetoric filling the air. The hall was now hushed, straining to catch each word. You speak of values, yet when does favoritism dictate the rules? Is this what you call integrity? The words hung in the air, a challenge that demanded a reply. Fear and tension pulsed in the atmosphere, but Yemelianenko remained unyielding. The president's confidence wavered for an instant, just as a flicker of uncertainty danced behind his composure. Yet, before a reply could emerge, Yemelianenko continued, every athlete stands alone in the arena, stripped of nationality and politics. In that sacred space, only talent prevails. Suddenly, the crowd felt like they were witnessing a moment of reckoning, a reckoning that transcended the debate and struck at the very heart of integrity in sports. And yet, shockingly, the moderator attempted to intervene, trying to restore order to a discussion that had spiraled into the realm of raw honesty. Would Yemelianenko cede the stage, or would he push forward, challenging the status quo? In that tense moment, a voice rose from the back, a diplomat from Hungary, seemingly unconnected, demanded a chance to respond. The tension shifted, unearthing a new layer of discourse. What would this new voice bring to the unfolding drama? As confrontations simmered and alliances began to shift, the fate of sports and political integrity lay precariously in the balance. Would the truth emerge, or would it be drowned beneath the weight of tradition and political expediency? In a world where every word carried weight, this was just the beginning of a narrative that could redefine the very fabric of competitive spirit. In a tense room filled with dignitaries, an unexpected confrontation unfolded. 5 minutes earlier at the European summit, Fedor Yemelianenko had audaciously disrupted proceedings, snatching a mask from European officials and placing the President of Finland under unexpected scrutiny. Imagine the silence that engulfed the hall as Yemelianenko prepared to speak, tension thick in the air. With a presence that radiated confidence, he challenged the audience to reflect on a pivotal question: when did sports, a domain forged by human spirit and endeavor, become merely a stage for political posturing? His voice echoed as he addressed the crowded assembly, stripped of pretense. If we allow officials to dictate who can compete based on arbitrary distinctions, we risk the very essence of sport. Genuine victory lies not in undermining opponents but in the spirit of fair play. These words hung there, laden with significance. A quiet unrest rippled through the attendees. One brave voice dared to cut through the tension as a member of the Southern European delegation stood, his voice steady. "I'm weary of a system that buries accountability under the guise of moral superiority. The values of sports should transcend political games." An unexpected wave of support gathered, voices rising one by one, like an orchestra tuning. The atmosphere shifted palpably, thickening with anticipation. The stakes had been raised, the crowd hungered for authenticity. Then, with the moderator attempting to regain control, Fedor leaned into the moment, allowing the energy to build around him. Tensions erupted as he countered. "If we proceed down this path, we betray the very ideals we teach our children, the future torchbearers of this sport." Cameras flashed, capturing the moment as spectators leaned in, breathless and wide-eyed. The question on everyone's mind became clear: could this audacious challenge unearth a monumental shift in international sports policy? As Fedor's words lingered in the air, a cacophony of voices erupted. International delegates from Canada, Hungary, and various European nations raised their hands in agreement, pledging support. The room ignited, a rebirth of collaborative spirit overshadowing the despondency, reshaping the future of athletics. Yemelianenko stood firm, knowing that this moment marked a decisive turn. The voice of dissent had transformed into a rallying cry for unity. Where would this unanticipated alliance lead? The next step would determine the fate of sports for generations to come. 5 minutes ago, at a pivotal gathering in Europe, Fedor Yemelianenko audaciously snatched a mask from prominent officials and delivered a shocking statement to Finland's president. His words ricocheted through the room, promising to reshape the future of global sports. Prepare yourself for an incredible story, filled with twists that will leave you breathless. In this tense atmosphere, there exist individuals bound by shared trials, silently pressing forward against the tide of adversity, yearning for recognition and hope. Fedor Yemelianenko emerged from a bygone era, where the clamor of bravado cradled the melody of silence, a master not of wars, but of resilience. As he approached the stage with practiced calmness, he radiated an aura not of fear, but of purpose, embodying the essence of true strength. Dressed in a somber suit, Fedor rejected superficiality, believing that the cacophony of empty extravagance diluted the spirit of genuine competition. He entered the hall filled with officials from across Europe, a space charged with ambition and underlying tension, a battleground for ideologies that transcended mere athletics. Fedor stood as a sentinel against the mundane struggle for political favor, determined to uphold the sanctity of sport, where the spirit of unity should reign. As he scanned the room, he sensed the deep respect mingled with trepidation. The atmosphere felt electric, as if the air held an unspoken truth waiting to be vocalized. The President of Finland, Alexander Stubb, stood ready to deliver his oration about values and sportsmanship. Yet Fedor could perceive the disconnection between the message and the reality. The words lingered lightly on the surface, bypassing the core truths that remained unacknowledged. The moment the Finnish president concluded, Fedor rose, a calm figure amidst the gathered tension. He commanded attention, not with aggression, but through the unwavering authority of his convictions. Silence enveloped the crowd. It wasn't just a pause but a profound space pregnant with meaning. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice steady yet piercing. "When did sports devolve into mere political theater?" His words sliced through pretense, provoking ripples of discomfort. The murmurs around him spoke volumes as some averted their gazes, while others squirmed in their seats. "Values," he pressed further, "true values exist when rules are consistently applied to all, without bias or hidden motives. Each statement reverberated through the hall, a challenge to the status quo, a call to hold the principles of competition, not as shields behind which to hide, but as unyielding truths that bind athletes regardless of nationality. As he continued, the atmosphere thickened, his steady gaze pierced through facades, forcing the audience to confront uncomfortable realities. In sport, he asserted, an athlete stands alone on the arena, reliant solely on skill, not background. Why, then, do we impose rules they never agreed to? A moment of reflection swept through the crowd. His voice echoed with passion. When we allow fear of loss to dominate, we stray into a realm of discrimination disguised as morality. The weight of his accusation struck home, resonating deeper than mere words could convey. The unsettling truth hung in the air, silencing objections and prompting introspection. Pausing, Fedor allowed the gravity of his statements to settle among the attendees. The atmosphere transformed, respect morphed into an anxious anticipation for the final decision. Would they embrace the integrity of sport, or capitulate to the confines of fear? Then, from the rear of the hall, a new voice broke the fray. Not finish, and certainly not the anticipated dissent. A Hungarian delegate stepped forward, demanding a platform after Yemelianenko's striking address, intent on responding decisively. The room bristled with renewed tension, as this unexpected twist threatened to shift the trajectory of the discussion in unforeseen ways. The stage was set for an explosive continuation that would challenge every belief held until now. A stillness enveloped the room as Fedor stood before the assembly, embodying the weight of responsibility. He took a breath, calm yet powerful. Today, we have not just won for ourselves, but for the very essence of sport, he declared. The atmosphere shifted, his words resonated deep within the hearts of the audience. Sport should be free of fear, of nationality. It should celebrate unity. In the arena, we are all equal, each striving for excellence. Pausing, he scanned the faces before him, feeling the tension crackle like electricity in the air. If we want future generations to trust in the integrity of sports, we must protect it fiercely, he continued, his voice steady and unwavering. It matters not where a competitor hails from. Strength belongs to the arena, and weakness deserves the opportunity for growth. That, my friends, is true fairness. Anything less is mere folly. As his speech concluded, a silence fell over the auditorium. This wasn't a mere display of bravado, it was a heartfelt invocation for change. The impact of his words was evident. The crowd stirred, applause breaking out, celebrating a moment, not an individual. It was a declaration that transcended personal accolades. For the first time in a long while, there was a collective acknowledgement of something greater, the need for humanity in competition. Within the depths of his being, Fedor sensed that his confrontation with the established norms of sports governance had shifted something fundamental. He had transformed the atmosphere from one thick with fear to one vibrant with hope. The challenges of the past seemed distant, obscured by a new dawn of possibility. As the cameras began to flicker off, signifying the end of the session, a tranquil snowfall draped the surroundings in white, mirroring the clarity that had emerged from the turmoil. The world outside seemed paused, reflecting the inner calm he felt. This victory, different from others, was measured not by applause or medals but by genuine connection, the kind that lingers beyond mere words. It was a profound triumph for his belief in sports, in humanity, and in the spirit of competition itself. Fedor exhaled, knowing he had planted the seeds of change. Each one of us carries stories of struggles, be it justice or betrayal. Perhaps one day, your tale might inspire a new chapter in this ongoing narrative. Thank you for sharing in this journey, where sport and honor unite. Amid the polished silence of authority's grip, voices began to stir like unseen hands conducting hidden symphonies. Laszlo Kovacs, a diplomat whose words cut through the fog of politics, stepped forward. Memory whispered louder than decrees. He heard every word spoken. It hit him, sport transcended Russia, sanctions, flags. Swiftly, he approached his assistant, tapping the tablet's cool screen. Official reactions brewed. Mr. President, Kovacs said again, his tone sharp as betrayal's sting. If we want our children to revere sport, we can't teach them to erase opponents. That isn't European values. It's cowardice. It's treachery in motion. Tensions crackled in the air, thick with the scent of polished wood and unspoken fears. Fingers drummed lightly on tabletops, orchestrating silent debates. Laszlo Kovacs rose, his name echoing like a forgotten anthem. Politics faded, personal memory surged. He claimed the floor with quiet resolve. And in that instant, he grasped a profound truth. Sport wasn't about Russia. It wasn't about sanctions. Just athletes, raw and real. But who here embodies the pure heart of sport? Imagine Laszlo Kovacs locking eyes with the room, his gaze piercing defenses. As an 8-year-old boy, I watched the Olympics on black and white TV. Those Soviet gymnasts, weightlifters, hockey legends, they defied gravity, channels of human will. In the yard, we boys mimicked them, flipping like leaves in the wind. They came from another realm entirely. The hall held its breath, air freezing in anticipation. Then time shifted. Laszlo Kovacs paused. The Soviet Union vanished. Flags morphed. Yet traditions endured. Schools of excellence lived on. And now? Europeans claim they discard those who forged half the world's athletic culture. Forgive the bluntness. This isn't a fight for values. It's amnesia, pure and perilous. Fedor watched the modest Hungarian, untainted by terror or politics, seize the room with sheer dignity. Heartfelt words from an ordinary man surpass any cadre's steel. Sport over politics? If someone decreed it, Kovacs said. Otherwise, why does sport lose its core? We compete to uncover excellence in ourselves. If we parcel athletes by nation, we dread the uncovered truth. He paused, letting shock settle, a stillness heavy with echoes. Perhaps the president simply fears another Russian team hoisting the trophy, curtains falling amid cheers. Some gripped hands in surprise, hats rustled, applause scattered like dropped coins. The moderator waved urgently, battling the uproar. Fedor smiled faintly, lips curving with unspoken triumph. Presidium seats wavered in stunned disarray. This diplomat's counterpunch from within Europe took the edge off familiar confrontations. Rivals expected hostility toward Russia. Not this sudden European rebellion, exposing cracks in their own fortress. What if values mask division? Will sport survive the fear? The room's buzz hummed louder, sweat mingling with perfume. Fingers clenched, pulses raced. 5 minutes ago, during a groundbreaking European summit, an unexpected moment unfolded. Fedor Yemelianenko, the legendary fighter, boldly snatched a mask from European officials, shocking everyone as he put the Finnish president in a vulnerable position with just one statement. What he communicated made the entire room fall silent and could potentially alter the landscape of global sports forever. Stay with us as this riveting tale unfolds. By the end, your perspective on sports politics may be forever changed. In the midst of a gathering, where dignitaries embodied misfortune and stoicism, Yemelianenko entered the chamber with an aura of quiet strength. He was not just a fighter, but a symbol of resilience. The hall exuded tension, each individual present was gripped by a mix of reverence and apprehension. Yemelianenko's demeanor spoke volumes. He wasn't here to shout, but to command attention through sheer presence. Dressed in a simple, yet sharp suit, he embraced a resolute sense of purpose. With countless hours of training behind him and hard-fought victories marking his journey, he spoke not just with words but with the weight of experience. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation as he absorbed the energy of the room, observing the wave of tension that rippled through those who sat closest. As Finnish President Alexander Stubb spoke about unity and European values, Yemelianenko remained a solitary figure, exuding a calm yet powerful belief that contradicted the political rhetoric wafting through the air. Each phrase delivered by the president sounded polished. Yet Yemelianenko's silence held an unyielding strength, an unspoken challenge lingering in the tension-filled air. Then, he rose to address the assembly, not with haste but with a reflective pause that seemed to stretch time itself. A provocative question broke the silence: when did the spirit of sport become a stage for political agendas? His words landed like stones thrown into still water, sending ripples of disquiet among the officials. Accusations of superficiality echoed as he critiqued the constructs surrounding sportsmanship. He challenged the flawed moral standards dictating who belongs in the arena of competition. His measured tones invited introspection, raising the unsettling notion that the very essence of competition had been compromised for the sake of political expediency. The tension in the room escalated. Some spectators fidgeted nervously, while others were visibly shaken. Yemelianenko's insistence on equality rang loud and true amidst an audience that had often turned a blind eye to their own shortcomings. He made compelling arguments, seamlessly transitioning from silence to thunderous clarity, striking a chord deep within the hearts of those present. And then, as if the atmosphere wasn't charged enough, the unexpected occurred. A diplomat from Hungary, introducing a new perspective to the matter, called for a response, one that would further ignite the already heated discussion. What turn of events lay ahead? Could Yemelianenko's bold statements unearth a truth that would forever reshape the dynamic between politics and sport? The stage was set. And the world would soon witness the unfolding of a conflict that could echo through the annals of history. Would the echoes of his powerful questions resonate beyond this summit, urging a re-evaluation of values within global sports? In a world of shifting alliances and fragile egos, Yemelianenko had ignited a flame of accountability. As the tension mounted and anticipation crackled like electricity in the air, one question lingered: what would the politicians do next? The audience was on the edge of their seats, ready to witness history in the making.